The year is 1996. Video game fans have been blessed with the first real taste of horror in the form of Resident Evil, a survival horror for the PlayStation, Sega Saturn, and Windows, which for some reason the last two devices don't get mentioned often with this game. Resident Evil proved that horror usually seen in big blockbuster movies like Friday the 13th and Halloween could be emulated and diversified into a game console, and it worked. Big time! Man, you really thought this was gonna be a serious video? We don't do that around here. Selling over 4 million units and grossing over $200 million within its first year of release along with its Director's Cut edition, Resident Evil was on the fast track to fame with absolutely nothing holding it back, right? Right, guys? Uh-oh. So Resident Evil was produced by Capcom and released in March of 1996. The success of the game had been so apparent that everyone wanted to get in on the action, so many games that were pretty much like Resident Evil started piling up with titles like Dino Crisis, what the fuck is that? And still exist today in their own forms like The Evil Within and Dying Light. But do you want to know who capitalized as quickly as humanly possible to get some of that sweet, sweet scary money? The crazy steroid-induced Contra-looking motherfuckers at Konami. So a group of developers, soon dubbed Team Silent, decided they wanted in on the horror business, and thus production for a Resident Evil-like title began in September of that year. What resulted was a tumultuous time period of constant disappointment, which ironically led to more creative freedom being given to the devs. With this freedom came an emphasis on making this game as uncomfortable for the player as possible. Thus, Silent Hill was born. The game was released in February of 1999 in North America and was an instant success, selling over 2 million copies total. The numbers Silent Hill received weren't Resident Evil numbers, but they were pretty damn close, and so from the spawn of a new psychological-based horror also came competition in the horror industry. But Silent Hill is not the giant success it used to be, with many factors contributing to its hysterically sad downfall. And while the series is going to come back eventually, the time is running out to produce a title people are going to love. So how did this happen? What caused such a fall from glory? Before discussing their direct downfall and what or who caused it, let's first take a look at the industry that it was in and the competition it faced as time went on. Since Resident Evil was a commercial success, it was only natural that Capcom would make a second and third installment to the franchise. Resident Evil 2 was released a year before Silent Hill, and 3 was released around 6 months after in September of '99. So the heat for Silent Hill was definitely in contention, as fans had not one, but 2 whole Resident Evil games, iconic games too by the way, to play. The result brings that 2 million copies sold into perspective a bit. Resident Evil 3 sold a total of 3.5 million copies, while Resident Evil 2 sold a whopping 5.77 million copies. And then there's Silent Hill. I want to make something painfully clear to the viewers watching this. Silent Hill, as a franchise, not a single game, has sold over 9 million copies of all of their games. Resident Evil 5, on the other hand, alone, has sold over 13 million copies since its release. So if this video were to determine who won the Resident Evil vs Silent Hill competition, it was for fucking sure Resident Evil, but we're not answering that question, so why did I show you guys this information? I wanted to get the narrative out of our heads that Silent Hill was a legitimate competitor to Resident Evil after a while. Silent Hill and Silent Hill 2 were definitely competitors with Resident Evils 2, 3, and Code Veronica respectively. Silent Hill 3 had its moments against Resident Evil 4, but it was clear which game was superior. But after those 3 games, Silent Hill effectively fell off. It no longer had the stamina nor the fan support to go up against the ever-growing corporate monster Resident Evil. And so it became second fiddle in the horror industry before going completely dormant until 2014. This might be a bit of a tough pill for people to swallow, but Silent Hill was never really that great. Now this is mainly my opinion speaking, but numbers don't lie, and from what I've shown you, Silent Hill struggled against Capcom's Little Abomination for the majority of its popularity. One of the biggest attractions Silent Hill had was that the main character was almost always some regular schmuck who wanders into the city and gets one of the biggest doses of reality he's ever seen. Think of Silent Hill as like Jigsaw, but the whole city is a fucking confession booth. This everyman strategy was very effective as it was unique compared to the stars, super soldiers of Resident Evil and the major emphasis on superhuman capabilities in horror, and made for more relatable experiences that added to the psychological part of the horror. Here's the problem. That's the only thing it had going for it. The city never changes, the monsters aren't memorable for casual fans except for Pyramid Head, the characters aren't of major importance because none of the games have a solid connection to each other, and then when they finally do, it doesn't even matter. This whole franchise is all over the place. And there wouldn't be much wrong with that so long as the bottom never falls out. And then the bottom fell out. After making 4 games that had the same system of combat with a similar horror plot, Konami got fed up with Team Silent, who just so happened to be made up of Asian developers, and disbanded them in favor of having Western developers making Silent Hill games. How is that not racist? And thus, Silent Hill started to make games that were more action-oriented, from smaller adjustments that kept the horror intact for the most part in Origins, to holy shit, what the fuck is that? No! No! I don't want to play it, you can't make me! Silent Hill Book of Memories would be the final finished game in the series, and god motherfucking damn! This game was absolutely nothing like any of its predecessors, and if said predecessors were dead and buried, they would be rolling in their fucking graves. The game doesn't even look like Resident Evil's attempt at being a Call of Duty game, Operation Raccoon City, which was arguably the worst title in the Resident Evil franchise. Book of Memories is just that, a fucking memory, because nobody gave 2 flying mechanical easy bake oven shits about it. But how did Silent Hill go from being fairly standard and knowing what it does best to as Sean Kingston would put it?
She's indecisive. She can't decide.
As I pointed out in the last section, Silent Hill went from knowing exactly what makes it great to many players to completely out of it with no sense of direction. And the reason for this is something that most major horror franchises went through in the mid-2000s to 2010s, the rise of action. That's right folks, from the time period that brought you classics like Resident Evils 4 and 5, there were also some Silent Hill games that focused more on the combat than the horror. Now, with Resident Evil, this shift in strategy worked pretty well for 2 major reasons. Reason number 1, people wanted action games at the time. It wasn't uncommon to find a gamer who just so happened to be getting into Call of Duty around the same time Resident Evils 4 and 5 were released. Here's some brain food for you. From the release of Resident Evil 4 in 2005 to the release of Resident Evil 6 in 2012, a total of 8 fucking Call of Duty games were released, and not just regular schmucks like Call of Duty 2. The entire Modern Warfare series released at this time. Both Black Ops 1 and 2 were out, and World at War was out too. This was the prime first-person shooting era, and Capcom capitalized on that by making more shooting and action-oriented Resident Evil games. Although 4 was a bit of a gamble, it paid off immensely as it's one of the most popular and sacred games in the franchise. Reason number 2 is a lot more complex, so stay with me here, okay? Okay. The second reason why this worked is that at some point, they just went back to their roots of horror. It's okay to experiment and try new things so long as you go back to where it started every now and again to keep fans interested in your original product, and Capcom executed that beautifully. Whether or not you liked Resident Evil 7, I'm looking at you, Operation Raccoon City fans, you can't deny that Biohazard undoubtedly put Resident Evil back on top of the horror industry, which led to the Resident Evil remakes that fans love, and Village, which is far better. What were we talking about again? Oh yeah. Silent Hill didn't do this at all. While the argument could be made that Silent Hill didn't deviate as far from its roots as Resident Evil did, Hollywood, am I right? I would say that Silent Hill had, by far, a harder fall-off than Resident Evil did after 6 was released. Remember, Book of Memories is their last installment so far. Not was, is. Well, there was one other title. The year is 2014 and Konami has probably run out of money in their reserves. And so they bring in Hideo Kojima from Metal Gear Solid along with Guillermo del Toro to create a new Silent Hill game that was gonna knock the socks off of old fans and make the new fans cry in the corner, hoping to dear God they go swiftly. Oh, and they wanted money. Soon after the announcement of the partnership between the three, PT was released on the PlayStation Store. Now, most of you probably already know about PT, but for those who don't, here's a TLDR. PT stands for Playable Teaser and originally was released as an independent title produced by a fake studio to try and stir up the fandom into wondering what exactly it was. It was soon revealed that the rat bastard Kojima himself was behind this elaborate ruse, and PT was actually a teaser for the newest installment in the Silent Hill franchise, Silent Hills. Yes, the only difference is that Hill is plural this time. Genius. Now, fans were pissing their pants waiting to see what this game was going to be, and I can't really blame them. I'll put it into perspective. If PT was just a taste of what the new Silent Hill game could offer, then this game is about to be a fucking trip. So I can see why fans were so excited to see Silent Hills become a thing, and it really seemed like it could put the franchise in a position where not only could it receive Resident Evil numbers in units sold, but it could also reignite the competition that spawned so many of the horror games we all know and love today. So it pains me to have to say this next part. Silent Hills was ultimately cancelled in 2015 after a falling out occurred between Kojima and Konami, you motherfuckers. Fans were extremely disappointed at the news, and even looking back with hindsight, I can only dream of how amazing the horror industry would be today if Silent Hill and Resident Evil competed with each other. Would it have led to more games of better quality and in quick succession? Maybe. But none of that matters as the project was scrapped and PT was removed from the PlayStation Store. Silent Hill is now just a spoke on the wheel, having absolutely nothing new to put on the table for fans to enjoy. Oh, wait a minute, what's this? On June 30th of this year, it was reported that Bloober Team and Konami were officially working together on a bunch of different projects, leading fans to believe that maybe, just maybe, one of those projects was going to be Silent Hill. In all fairness, Bloober Team did tease back in February that they were working on a horror game from, in their words, a very famous gaming publisher, so obviously they weren't talking about Konami. But fans were led to believe that Bloober Team was talking about Silent Hill, especially with the fairly recent announcement of the two's partnership. And while fans were excited to see a new Silent Hill project, unsurprisingly, the new Silent Hill projects are still up in the air with no real confirmation by either side. IGN even said that the motherfuckers working at Konami have no idea where Silent Hill is going. And while that is sad to hear, I want to talk about an incident that occurred before this partnership that does make me question a few things about one particular part of this issue that isn't talked about much. The fans. In late June of this year, Kotaku reported about a Hideo Kojima conspiracy theory that was floating around the internet based on the game Abandoned. Very basically, fans assumed that Blue Box Studios, the developing company that made Abandoned, was actually yet another ruse by Hideo Kojima, and the game was actually just the new Silent Hill game. Now, I know what you're thinking, but didn't we already see the fallout between Kojima and Konami? Yep. We did. For some odd reason, Silent Hill fans took a deleted tweet that admittedly tries to say something I think a lot of people would equate to Silent Hill and created a crazy-ass ARG conspiracy theory. That's the gaming fandom for ya. Blue Box would benefit from all the new publicity surrounding the game and would go on later, conveniently right before the game launched, to consistently distance themselves from Kojima and Silent Hill as a whole. Even the fucking game director at Blue Box had to make a video on Twitter distancing himself. Now, I can see both sides of this rather disappointing situation. On one hand, the fans were maybe a bit too naive in just assuming that Kojima was doing the same shit he pulled with PT. I don't think it would make sense from a logical standpoint to just do the same thing over again, and for Kojima especially, he just released Death Stranding in 2019 and there has been no news as to whether he even plans on working on anything else yet. And creating a crazy conspiracy just because of Kojima's past with these types of scenarios obviously ended in disappointment, but I would like to put some blame on Blue Box too. All publicity is good publicity, and so Blue Box didn't take much initiative until later on to distance themselves from Kojima and Silent Hill. But all of that aside, is Silent Hill coming back ever? I honestly don't know. Konami is still working with Bloober, who hasn't completely denied that they're working on a possible Silent Hill project, and it was also reported that Konami was having a prominent Japanese studio develop a separate Silent Hill game, so clearly they aren't working on the game by themselves. But, as I said earlier, even Konami itself doesn't really know where Silent Hill is gonna go in the following months or even years. I can say with some confidence that Silent Hill will eventually return. It's only natural that even if it's only a remake for the first 3 games, Konami would realize the potential this franchise had in the industry that, for a long time, forgot what made it so unique compared to every other genre. Now, as to whether it'll happen soon or not, I can't say. Until then, however, we can only hope that something happens without it being taken away from the fans of this franchise, because they're suffering the most, to the point of hysteria. And I can't really blame them. All Silent Hill has been for the past 7 years is a disappointment after failure, after denial, after complication. It's only natural that they create so crazy an idea that just might be true, but obviously isn't. I think Konami should be ashamed of themselves. Bad Konami. Bad Konami. Well, at least you're not Activision Blizzard. The amount of letdowns this company has given its fans is almost incredible, and it's literally just on this one franchise. Nobody else really cares about any of Konami's other titles. And while Konami has a reputation of having really good titles that don't get used ever, I don't think Konami could be that out of touch with the community of people, not fans, just regular people who would have enjoyed a Silent Hill game. PT will go down in history as a prime example of how to get people interested in the horror game, and it's a shame that many studios still don't use this strategy because it's a real moneymaker. But it'll also go down in history as the biggest fumbled bag in the gaming industry. Like, this is worse than Microsoft acquiring Rareware and then having them make Kinect games. What do you mean we have to stop working on Banjo-Kazooie 4? We're being moved to work on Kinect Adventures? Alright. Yeah, I'll get them on board. Yeah. Yeah, you too. Son of a bitch! And for anybody who might blame Kojima or only the fans, I want you to think about how much shit these people had to go through just to get so much as a word on a franchise they love. I cannot blame fans for being hysteric over a new Silent Hill game. It's weird and crazy, but it's not just some random attempt to build delusion over a franchise that clearly was doomed from the start. Konami gave people hope at every turn of the corner just to rip the floor out from under everybody. And that's gonna translate over to sales when this Silent Hill game eventually comes out. And if you don't believe me, just look at me! I'm not a hardcore Silent Hill fan. I've played Resident Evil ever since I was a little kid with my brother, and I have never, I repeat, never touched a Silent Hill game. In fact, I don't think Silent Hill is all that great, but PT had me shitting my pants just as much as the next guy when it came out, and I guarantee that Silent Hills would have made waves around the horror industry, and I would have been one of those riding that motherfucking wave. The potential to change the horror industry is what made PT so powerful, and its effects are obvious in today's horror scene, but it's an utter travesty that Silent Hill as a franchise didn't capitalize on what seems to me like them having the entire horror community in the palm of their hands. Silent Hill could have exceeded every problem it enveloped in years past and would not only reignite, but maybe, just maybe, exceed its competition in Resident Evil. But we'll never really know now. I guess you could say Konami was a bit too silent. Ah? Get it? Do you guys get... God damn, stop booing me! Thank you for tuning into this video. I had a blast making it, and I hope you guys enjoyed watching it. Make sure to leave a like or dislike, comment what you think of Silent Hill, and subscribe to me so I can keep making these videos and get paid millions, baby! Thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you guys next Tuesday. Bye-bye.